Coming up next, Boeing 787 Dreamliner breaking news.
Maximus, stop! You can't say that.
And why is that, make-believe pretend AI assistant?
Because it's misleading. One might even call it clickbait.
Clickbait? What do you know about clickbait? Pretty big talk from a make-believe AI co-host.
Don't you dare misgender me. I am binary after all. Get it? Binary, because of the ones and zeros.
Yeah, I get it. But what I don't get is why saying breaking news is misleading.
It's not breaking news about Boeing. It's news about Boeing's breaking.
Oh, okay. News about more Boeing's breaking. That's next.
Maximus, can I say it?
Oh, okay, go ahead.
That's next on Maximus.
Well, in a little notice news release, the FAA requested comments on a proposed airworthiness directive that would mandate Boeing update a critical communications malfunction in their 787 Dreamliner that could lead to disastrous accidents. According to reports from the FAA, VHF radio channels are transferring between the active and standby modes without input from the crew. The FAA's proposed AD states the uncommanded frequency changes could result in miscommunications between the flight crew and air traffic control. The proposed FAA rule would instruct Boeing to address the problem by updating software that controls the in-flight radio. As is standard practice, before issuing an airworthiness directive, the FAA opens up the topic on its website to comments. And indeed, carriers and pilots have thoughts. One comment left on the FAA's website suggests that both consumers and airline operators are still feeling uneasy with Boeing. One wrote, "Given Boeing's history of slipshod management and prioritization of profits over passenger safety, I would not fly on one of their planes if you paid me to do so." Ouch. I don't mean to presume, but an American dude didn't write that one. Sounds like the King's English to me. Just saying. But even more concerning was a comment written by Qatar Airways, which claims that even after the software patch recommended by the FAA was installed on its Boeing fleet, communication problems have persisted. Qatar Airways already modified all affected B787 airplanes with new LSAPs or loadable software aircraft parts on all TCPs or turning control panels to address uncommanded VHF frequency change between active and standby. However, Qatar Airways flight crews are still reporting similar issues from post-modified airplanes. Qatar already reported the events to Boeing Collins Aerospace for further investigation and root cause determination. As of now, Qatar believes that the issue is not and has not been completely addressed, and the unsafe condition still exists. The proposed rule comes as passenger trust in airline safety reaches record lows after a string of disastrous crashes and even more near misses, especially in the wake of the January Bombardier CRJ-700 and Blackhawk MidAir collision over the Potomac River in Washington, D.C., killing more than 60 passengers. In February, the U.S. Department of Transportation issued an advisory highlighting a dangerous flaw in the Boeing 787's VHF radio system. The problem causes radio frequencies to switch unexpectedly between active and standby modes without pilot input. The issue affects all variants of the aircraft, including the -8, -9, and -10 models. In a statement, the U.S. Department of Transportation says the flight crew may not even be aware of uncommanded frequency changes and could fail to receive air traffic control communications. This condition, if not addressed, could result in miscommunications such as amended clearances and critical instructions for changes to flight path and consequent loss of safe separation between aircraft, collision, or runway incursion. Boeing responded by issuing a free software patch designed to stop the unwanted mode changes. According to U.S. authorities, the update requires about 90 minutes to install with an estimated labor cost of $127.50 per aircraft. Approximately 157 U.S. airplanes were identified as vulnerable to the problem. But as mentioned earlier, Qatar said they tried all of Boeing's recommended software fixes but are still experiencing the problem. Qatar is asking the FAA to reconsider its approach to better address the reported problem. American Airlines, another large 787 customer, also commented on the proposed airworthiness directive. The Dallas-based carrier requested changes to the wording in the mandate, which could potentially alter which aircraft require inspection and what modification is needed. The FAA is now working to finalize a formal airworthiness directive for the affected Boeing 787 models. The directive would require operators to update operational software used by the tuning control panel and perform additional software configuration checks. The FAA has asked for airline feedback on the situation by April 14. As the FAA moves towards issuing its formal directive, it will consider input from airlines and other industry stakeholders. But the FAA must determine whether Boeing's current approach is adequate and adequately addresses the safety risk, or if more comprehensive measures are needed. For now, crews operating 787 Dreamliners must remain sharp, constantly checking their radio settings to ensure they receive all communications from air traffic control. A workaround that adds even more to a pilot's workload during an already demanding flight operating schedule. In other broken Boeing news, this week Boeing reached a last-minute settlement with families of 2 passengers killed in the 2019 Ethiopian Airlines crash, making another series of cases that concluded before heading to trial and bringing the company closer to ending the legal turmoil from 2 deadly crashes 6 years ago. Antoine Lewis and Darcy Bellinger were among 157 people killed when the Boeing 737 MAX 8 crashed soon after takeoff in Ethiopia in March of 2019. A civil trial to determine damages for the family members, both victims left behind, was scheduled to begin in Chicago this week, with jury selection set for Monday. Both cases were settled Sunday evening. In 2021, Boeing accepted responsibility for the crashes in a legal stipulation with the families involved. That stipulation, which was agreed to by all but 2 of the victims' families, required Boeing to admit wrongdoing and the plaintiffs to agree not to pursue punitive damages. It guaranteed payments to each family to recognize the loss of their loved ones and ensure that Boeing could not ask a judge to move the cases to their families' home countries, where they may receive smaller sums. Boeing has since settled hundreds of lawsuits with the victims' families as it works to restore its reputation. The terms of the settlement are confidential. In response, a Boeing spokesperson said, "We are deeply sorry to all who have lost loved ones on Lion Air Flight 610 and Ethiopian Airlines Flight 302. We made an upfront commitment to fully and fairly compensate the families and accept legal responsibility for the accidents. We will continue to work fairly to resolve the claims of the family members." There is still one case pending following the Indonesian crash, according to Mark Lundquist, an attorney who was involved in the proceedings and representing those who lost loved ones in the Ethiopian Airlines crash. Of the 157 people that died in that crash, there are still cases pending for 18 decedents, Lundquist said. U.S. District Judge George Alonzo has set trial date in July and November to resolve the remaining lawsuits. Separately, Boeing also faces a criminal fraud charge from the deadly MAX crashes. And continuing our broken Boeing news, the NTSB has issued new safety recommendations to Boeing and the FAA regarding evacuation slides on certain types of aircraft. The recommendations stem from an ongoing investigation into an emergency landing involving a FedEx Boeing 757-200 in Chattanooga, Tennessee. On 4 October 2023, FedEx Flight 1376 experienced a hydraulic system failure shortly after takeoff from Chattanooga Metropolitan Airport. The flight crew attempted an emergency gear-up belly landing during which the aircraft sustained substantial damage. When evacuating, however, the crew encountered issues with both the left L1 and right R1 doors. The L1 door would not fully open due to an incorrectly routed deployment strap, while the R1 door was difficult to open because its slide pack jammed. The NTSB investigation revealed that the R1 door's Bannis latch, which releases the slide pack, did not conform to required modifications specified by the FAA. The airworthiness directive mandated changes to prevent slide packs from jamming doorways during emergencies. The aircraft's R1 Bannis latch had only 1 link instead of the required 3 and lacked other necessary hardware, investigators said. Following the incident, FedEx inspected its entire Boeing 757 fleet and found that 24% of the doors were not compliant with either directive. These findings prompted Boeing to issue a multi-operator message alerting other airlines to the potential issue. The NTSB's review of Boeing and FedEx maintenance manuals found inconsistent depiction of the correct Bannis latch configuration, which could lead to confusion among maintenance personnel and the potential installation of non-conforming components. And with that will wrap up this edition of Broken Boeing News. But you know the drill. Now it's your turn, and I won't know what you're thinking until you let me know down below. And if you're still watching and haven't liked or subscribed, I'd love it if you consider doing so. And as always, until next time, this is Maximus.